out there and trusted, and of course, when the results came in from my students and I started to see, holy smokes, this works, like, because for instance, like for understanding how to play taqsim, the alternative is really horrible. I have people who wasted like 20 years, 30 years trying to crack how to create an authentic taqsim.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman, and I'm delighted to welcome Maya Youssef, the world-renowned Qanun master and innovative British-Syrian educator. Maya shares with us how her frustrations with the traditional teaching of Arabic music led her to develop her unique system for teaching musicians and dancers in a completely different way. She also shared her past personal crisis as a victim of domestic abuse and how she found the strength to get out of that danger, which is shockingly pervasive. In fact, she said that she chooses to be vulnerable in sharing this because we never know who is listening. You will be uplifted with clips from Maya's beautiful second album, Finding Home, which I encourage you to buy, and you'll find all Maya's projects linked in her website in the show notes of this podcast. She also talked to me about her exciting upcoming projects in 2026, including her book about learning and teaching Arabic music, her upcoming album and tours, and her wonderful collaborators. Maya spent the interview with her kanun, and you'll hear her demonstrate several times, including a beautiful improvisation on maqam Rast. Like all my episodes, you can either watch the video version on my YouTube or listen to the podcast on your preferred platform. The transcript is linked in the show notes, along with several other episodes I think you'll love as well. Now to Maya Youssef. Hi Maya, thanks so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Leah.
I'm delighted to see that you're sitting at your kanun.
Yes, of course. We are inseparable. I'll be incomplete without it.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, but since you're sitting there, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the instrument? Because not everyone listening will be familiar with the kanun, and those who love it will still want to.
So the kanun is a 7/8 stringed plucked zither that comes from the Arab world, although it does exist in Persian music and Turkish music. It's a Middle Eastern instrument. And the word Qanun, of course we say kanun because you can't really pronounce the letter qaf, but the word Qanun means law, means principle. And it's sort of kind of like the piano of the Arab world. And the way you play it is that you usually have like these plectrums that you can see in my fingers if you're watching on social media or YouTube, and you pluck with your index finger. But also you are really using your 10 fingers to arpeggiate or strum. So yeah, it's creating different colors. So yeah, and it's a beautiful, rich instrument that everybody should know about.
And I understand the levers that control the microtones in the Turkish version of the kanun. There are more, correct?
That is correct. So on the side of the instrument, we have these metallic pieces, and they control the tension of the string. So every time I pull the lever up, the pitch goes up, and every time it goes down, it goes down. So the Arabic kanun has usually 4 levers per note, which is the perfect translation of. So if we're thinking Abu Nasr al-Farabi, who's the most revered musicologist, theoretician in the history of Arabic music, he said the tone is 4 quarters, and in the Arabic kanun you have 4 levers to demonstrate that. So it's a perfect demonstration of that. Like for instance, that's an E. I'm going down, so I'm pulling levers down. That's E half flat, which does not exist in Western music. E flat, quad flat, double flat. And with the Turkish kanun, they divide the tone into 9 parts called komas, and therefore they have more levers. But in the Arabic kanun, kind of like you have 4 quarters, kind of 4 slices of the cake, if you wish.
But do you also bend the notes without using the levers, or always with them?
Yeah, you totally bend. So you can create vibrato. So basically by allowing the lever to flutter underneath the string without raising it all the way up. It's kind of creating that butterfly. So yeah, the function of the lever is like, for me as a kind of player, like for instance, I want to play something in maqam nahawan. So I set the levers, and maqam means mode, by the way, or it's a modal system of Arabic music. And so I'll set the levers to be in that maqam, and then while I'm playing, the right hand is going to play the melody while the left hand is going to do these vibratos, as well as switching levers up and down. And sometimes that happens pretty fast. Like for example, here is a vibrato. It just went left to right. So you're constantly doing up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and fluttering.
Do you know, Maya, in the history of the instrument, were there no levers, like when it was in a more primitive form?
Exactly. So basically, there were no levers, and Qanun, I can't even imagine. You know, it must have been a nightmare, because they would have to know the song. You know, so like for instance, if I am playing a song, I need to know what are the switches, the modulations, because Arabic music is never static. And so I would tune one octave on the original maqam, the higher octave on the other maqam, and then the lower octave on a different maqam. And also, of course, you would be able to control the tensions with the tip of your thumb. It's not the same as levers. The levers create a cleaner sound. So that, yeah, it was a nightmare. So, and then the Turks added the levers in early 20th century that basically made life so much easier. Made it so it's very quick. It just takes a flick of a second to switch.
Yeah. I was thinking, I do try to feature instruments from different traditions on this series. So I've had, the koto, guzheng, hammer, dulcimer. They're all related, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, all instruments are related somehow.
Yeah,
we don't know really, because the historical evidence is very slim. I tried to go down that rabbit hole and have found nothing concrete really, just hints here and there. But yeah, I'd like to think of all music as being connected.
Yeah. I was wondering about the Silk Road and the connection between perhaps Asia and the Middle East, but you don't know about that.
It's very likely,
yeah.
But again, I don't know how much concrete evidence there is.
Okay. Well, can we talk about young Maya? I understand you had beautiful listening sessions with your family almost every night.
Yes. Yeah, we had a beautiful ritual every day. So for context, my family were a family of writers and artists, and my dad had more of the eclectic taste, so we would listen to anything from Miles Davis to Tchaikovsky to African choirs jamming with Johann Sebastian Bach, to Jan Garbarek, ECM records, lots of ECM records, and then also we would listen to the classics of the Arab world, the Kulthum, the Sabah Fakhri, the Saad Muhammad, the Abdul Wahab, and so yeah, every night we'll listen to something different, and sometimes me and my little brother would dance, sometimes we just draw, or we just imagine scenes happening because of the music, and yeah, it's kind of like gave me such a rich musical background to grow from, really.
It's a very unusual thing, certainly nowadays, for people to just sit and listen, let's say, to a whole album together in silence.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember us being silent. We would sometimes we'd listen, sometimes we'd talk, or sometimes my dad was like, listen to this bit, and what can you see? So, it wasn't like a silent. And anyway, if you have ever been to an Arabic concert, usually people are not sat in silence. More of a Western thing, you know. It's not like that, you know, Arab audiences are disrespectful to the performer, but there are different rules of engagement in which you're supposed to kind of tell the performer that you're enjoying what you're hearing by exclaiming Allah, which is the equivalent of ole, for instance. So, and we were little, so we were not like supposed to like sit down, you know, like in a very rigid way and listen. So, but yeah, sometimes we'd listen to bits in silence. Sometimes we'd just talk over it, or we would, we would just imagine things or draw or write. And yeah, it was one of the most precious gifts I think my parents have ever given me.
Thanks for making that distinction, but I guess what I meant is it was purposeful listening. It wasn't like, oh, we're doing something else, therefore there's music in the background.
No, it was like, this is listening time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So your dad, Hassam M. Youssef, he's a writer and screenwriter as well?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
So I was curious if in your creative life, if you're interested in film or TV or writing, you know.
That's so funny you're asking this. You know, last week I was over the course of this week, I was reminded that I would love to at some point write music for a film, for a feature film, or an art film, or any form of film, because like with my last album, I started writing tracks that are inspired by works of art, you know, contemporary art. And film is not going to be different from that. Of course, it's going to be different, and it's. But I feel that I have the material, and this week alone, I was asked by 3 different people about this very thing. So here you are echoing this again. So the answer is yes, but of course it has to be the right film. Yeah, it's something that will happen one day. When, how, I have no idea. It will reveal itself.
This is a clip of Silver Lining. Wonderful. And your mother is a translator?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, she translates literature from French to Arabic.
Yeah. I was wondering, because when you went to university in Damascus, you also studied English literature as well as music?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. There was this, I've seen one of my friends, I really never wanted a career in English literature. I loved it. But when I was in the Little People's Institute, which was called Mahal Arabi, I saw that one of the performers, who was an amazing cellist, she injured her hand, her fingers, so she could no longer play the cello. So I told myself that I would never want this to happen to me, so I'm just going to study another thing other than music. And of course I ended up doing nothing but music at the end of the day. But it was a beautiful thing to study anyway, so yeah.
Well, you've told the story many times, but not all my listeners will have heard how you started to play the kanun, especially as a girl, how unusual that was. So if you could share that. Sure,
of course. This is the classic origin story. Here goes. So I started learning music at about the age of 6, because I was just tapping and singing all the time, so my parents were like, let her do something with it. And also my dad was tone deaf completely. He still is. He can't, like, just ask him to sing anything, even though he listens to, he's an avid listener. He won't sing and be able to sing anything to save his life. So he had like a kind of a dream to be a musician. So he was like, okay, maybe she will become a musician. For 2 years you had to like study very rigid, like solfeggio, how to translate rhythm into movements, harmony. We had like basically Russian teachers who would ask me to like memorize an exercise, write it down 50 times, and then sing it pitch perfect the next class, which would be in 2 days. So it was this kind of discipline, which was amazing, to be honest with you. Looking back, some people might think of it as a test, but for me this kind of discipline did wonders. Anyway, so for 2 years I did that, and then there came the moment when you're supposed to pick one instrument, and the taxi driver we were heading to the Music Institute on a hot summer's day in Damascus, sat at the back seat of a taxi, and I think this tune played. This is the instrument that I want to play. And this was like 8-year-old Maya, and he was like, this is the Qanun, you are a girl, this instrument is for men, forget about it. And he cracked a big belly laugh, which I still remember until today. I was so angry with him, I was like, I'll play it, you'll see. And then that night I walked into the music classroom while my mom was reading her book in the corridor, and then that very night the head of the institute walks in to announce the opening of a kanun class, and so I ran, signed up, to the astonishment of my mother, and because in the beginning we picked a violin, which I started with, and I was really not keen on violin. I know you're a violinist, so I love violin, but it wasn't for me. So we returned that violin, my parents returned that violin, and then we had a kanun that was 5 times my size on the kitchen table. I couldn't even reach the higher octaves, we needed multiple pillows. And yeah, this is how it started. It has been my friend ever since.
And your first kanun teacher was open to the fact that there was a girl in the class?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was no problem with that, as long as the family supports you, particularly because Syria is a patriarchal society. If the man of the house supports you, no problem. And I had amazing support from both my parents, so without that I will never get anywhere, really.
I'm curious about the rigor of this kind of conservatory style training. I'm curious about a couple of things, because you mentioned studying harmony, but was it Western harmony? Because Arabic music isn't harmonically based.
Yeah, it was all Western. And even though we were in Syria, Damascus, we were not taught Arabic music in the Kids Institute, for instance. Even though I'm playing a classical Arabic instrument, like not in the High Conservatory of Music in Damascus, it started, but it was very minimal. And I received, my education from outside. I kind of like, personal effort. So yeah, it's interesting that was the case.
I've spoken with several French musicians who grew up with this strict conservatoire system, saying that they felt like it could really hamper children's interest in music because there was this. You weren't able to play an instrument until you'd done all this solfege. It worked for you, but did you see classmates that maybe it was too much of a struggle?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. It was hardcore. Looking back, yeah, it was. But I am a person who loves to be challenged. And look, it's not that it was always easy for me. I struggled. I had a lot of moments where like, this is too much, it's too hard, I can't do it. I just want to give up. Particularly in the moment when I figured out that I can't improvise, for instance, which is in Arabic music is called taqsim, and it's considered to be the pinnacle of Arabic music. And so when I figured out I can't do it, and when I was told like, hey, you're not a musician unless if you can improvise, I was like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And then of course later I discovered that the problem is not in me. So yeah, it wasn't all roses, but yeah, I'm grateful to all of it, really.
I want to dig into, I know the way you teach is different than the way you were taught, but how old were you when you were having a struggle where you felt like you couldn't improvise?
Well, particularly when I entered the conservatoire, the High Institute of Music and Dramatic Arts. I mean, to be honest with you, I have been performing professionally immediately, basically, just like I started doing concerts almost immediately. But things started to get serious the minute I entered the conservatoire, because at the time I was one of the founding members of an all-woman band playing just traditional Arabic repertoire, and we became a hit before we even performed our first, our first gig was on the Concertgebouw, in Amsterdam, and so I was like, okay, you need to figure this out. And I was like the youngest, so I was acutely aware that, oh my gosh, I need to prove that I can do this. So yeah, this is when it got started, and yeah, it was a couple of years before I figured out what to do.
Okay, so before we get into that, this sounds like there's a story here. How did you guys get this gig at the Concertgebouw before you even played a concert?
It was interesting. It's just, so we were the brainchild of the head of the conservatoire. His name was Nabil Law at the time, Ustaz Nabil Law, and he basically started talking about us, and we just had basically a whole tour lined up, including we were going to different cities in Italy, in China, Greece. We did a lot of touring before, and all of that was booked up before we even performed our first gig. So yeah, it's not usually the case, is it? But yeah, I suppose people love the idea of an all-women. I suppose it plays into the Orientalistic, like this Orientalist fantasy of all women playing this exotic kind of music. I don't know what made it a hit. I just don't know. But we were a hit before we even hit the stage.
Mm-hmm. And the members of that band, have other members emigrated, or?
No, we were all native Syrians, so.
I mean, since that time.
Yeah, many of us are scattered all over. Many of my friends, the vast majority of my friends, they are all over the globe. Mm.
Well, let's talk about how you have this wonderful system of teaching. I've got hints of it through some of your videos, and if you want to share how this came about, maybe in your Lego.
Oh, my Lego. Yeah, sure. So it all started with my hunger to know how on earth to improvise, and because listen, I was already in the Kids Institute for 7 years, and then I've done 2 years of the High Conservatory of Music, so I already invested 9 years of my life into this thing. So I was like, I better know what it is and how to do it. So I just did what people told me to do: read books. And of course, first of all, to be able to improvise, you need to understand maqam, which is the modal system of the Arabat. Okay, and so I read the books. I didn't get answers. I actually created a little booklet and named the maqamat at the top, and then I got my dad to take me to every single big musician in Damascus, and I was like, teach me maqam, and I just got like 2-3 words scribbled in each page, lots of empty space basically. People told me to copy the taqsim, the improvisation, and just listen. Some people told me just work on your technique, it will work. None of it worked. So because there is a huge amount of shame attached to not being able to, or to even say the words, I have no clue how to play a taqsim. Nobody says it, so everybody pretends to be able to, like, okay, yeah, okay, right. So I'm going to pretend that I can do it, which I did, and but really inside I have no idea. And later on, now as a mentor, the world leading maqam and taqsim mentor, I talk to people every day who tell me the same thing. By the way, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. But anyway, so there was a key moment in which I finally discovered that there's something fundamentally wrong with the way how I was approaching the whole thing. So I headed to a concert in Aleppo with an ensemble from the conservatoire, and Aleppo, for context, is a center of Arabic music. It's central to Arabic music. It has a group of people called Sami'a, which translates as those who listen. And those people are kind of like very important guardian of the tradition, gatekeepers of the tradition. Every single star of the golden age of Arabic music had to go through the rite of passage of performing in front of them before they, just become, big stars. And it's not like, isolated cases here. That every single one of them. And there's so much, literature and, proof about it. And so I knew about this and I was freaking out because I was supposed to play a taqsim in maqam Rast, which is, it's a very, it's a very tarab conducive maqam. Tarab means like you are in that heightened state of pleasure, emotion, and it's kind of like the ultimate aim of Arabic music altogether. And so it's a very tarab conducive maqam, and if you do it right, then you create tarab, and if you do it wrong, then you're gonna get like a boohoo. And so I played the taqsim Rast, and I got an applause and Allah, which is the ultimate seal of approval. And then somebody comes to me after the concert. I was, of course, shaking because I was so scared. I was like, I don't know, I was still very, very young. And he started talking to me, and he named every single maqam switch that I've done. And I assumed he was a conservatoire educated musician. I come to know that he is an illiterate gardener. And I was stupefied, but then I brushed it as an accident. I was like, nah, this doesn't mean anything. So I go outside with my friends to have a meal after the concert in a cafe, and there was, in the radio there was Kulthum playing, and there was a guy sweeping the streets outside, and he was singing with Kulthum, pitch perfect, while he was also naming every single maqam switch she was doing. Allah yasit ala naqlat nakriz, Allah yasit ala naqlat al-huzam, which means that what a beautiful shift to this maqam, and what a beautiful shift to that maqam. And then I was like, okay, there's something I need to learn from, humble myself, forget books, forget, everything, unlearn, and, just listen to how they're doing it. So they're doing it the organic way. And then that was the opener to creating my methodology to teach maqam with a visual way, with Lego. Because I like to play, I like to see things visually, and I have a nerdy brain that really likes to figure out how things work. And so I've taken the organic method of the Sami'a as the basis of my methodology, and developed it even further to become the only complete system on the planet to teach Arabic music, from maqam all the way to taqsim. So yeah, it has been quite a journey, lots of, blood and tears to get here, but now it helps, hundreds of people from all over the world without even needing to know how to read sheet music or to know anything about music theory.
So people buy your system and then there's modules they have access to.
Yes, exactly. So there are different ways. There are, home study courses, and there is a whole academy for maqam and taqsim, in which I have, musicians who play all sorts of instruments, singers, all the way from singer-songwriters to composers to DJs to Qanun players. And yeah, we really go deep into this. So, but yeah, there are all kind of levels of access, and it's all out there on my website.
If you could, of course, your website will be linked and all that. If you could play a taqsim with maqam Rast, you just mentioned that this might be beautiful to hear.
Sure. Just play you a little something.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. So I'm curious, Maya, like obviously you've arrived at this mastery and this flow, this creative flow, but when you were kind of making it work, but you didn't feel like you could do it, were you imitating?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is what they tell you to do. Memorize. But, just memorizing a whole thing, it's like kind of like memorizing a mathematical formula without understanding it. It just won't work. And so in this methodology, there is, there are things, like for instance, in this methodology, I say that each maqam is like a person, they have a specific language that they speak. And this language is basically, it's a little collection of something I call idiomatic phrases, short melodic phrases that tells you that you're speaking the language of the maqam. So those things have been used since, we don't know how long. Everybody uses them, and I've just used a bunch of them, by the way. So these elements, you just have to know by heart and then add your own twist to them. But the rest is all subject to, to your own creativity, to how you would articulate, I would never ask anybody to be a copy of me, because that would be boring, Who would want a copy of anyone? I would want everybody to be a unique expression of themselves. So yeah, we just break down what to look for and so the things that are fixed and the things that you can be creative, so you can get to a place where you can just go, okay, I'm just gonna flow with it. But yeah, it's a process to get there.
Now, you had learned to improvise, but you weren't really composing until you first created your first album, Syrian Dreams.
Yes.
And for people that haven't heard your albums yet, they should realize it's not traditional Arabic music. It's
no. No, it's not traditional Arabic music.
Hi, just a quick break from the episode. I've linked several episodes I'm sure you'll love in the show notes for you, with Ali Omar El Farouk, Shirley Kazuyo Muramoto, Kelly Toma, Mohammed Asani, and Oljai Bayir. You'll also find the link to sign up for my newsletter, and the main reason for you to do so, aside from each weekly episode, is that you'll get exclusive information about upcoming guests. Finally, please support this independent project, for which I do all the many jobs, and which cost me quite a bit of money personally. You can share this episode with a friend, write a review, buy some podcast merch, or buy me a coffee on my Ko-fi page, either once or every month. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks. Now, back to Maya Youssef.
When I started writing, it's very interesting. If you remember from the beginning, all of these influences that I had as a child, they all came out. Surprise, surprise. I always liked, very unusual things. I was not your usual Syrian girl by any stretch of the imagination. Even in my behavior, I was a bit of a geek and a bit of a loner when I was little, a bit in my own world and bubble, and that definitely showed up when I started writing. And then when I started writing, everybody was like, "Oh, we hear echoes of jazz and flamenco and a bit of Philip Glass," and I'm like, "Really?" But then upon reflection, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, it's not traditional at all. Look, if you are a Picasso, you would learn the classics before you can break the mold. So without that grounding in the classics of Arabic music, you can never get to a place where your contemporary stuff will make sense. It will sound kind of empty, unrooted, lacks depth, basically. So, in every tradition we say, know the rules so you can break the rules. Which is, it's true to any form of art. And so from that rooted space, having been a native to Syria, having heard the music, having practiced the classics for, years and years and years, and probably past lifetimes, if you believe in that, then I am in a place where I can, express, my unique nerdy self. It's kind of like you're a tree. These are your roots that ground you, but then with your branches you can go whatever, and have fun.
This is a clip of Invitation to Daydream. I was just thinking, we talked a little bit earlier how you knew a cellist who had an injury and you were thinking you needed a backup plan when you were a young university student. But I was wondering, I know at times you've practiced many, many hours a day and you're also mentoring other musicians. I guess with any instrument we can have injuries. Is it something you've had to struggle with at times, or is it always feel good?
No, I was lucky. I never had an injury. I'm blessed for that, so touch wood.
And are you finding other kanun players run into trouble with their hands or arms sometimes?
No, not really. I just mainly tell them to with kanun players is just to have the right posture, because I see a lot of the wrong posture, and mainly to relax. This is the most repeated advice. I was just teaching my kanun mastery before I came here, academy, and I'm like, this is the most repeated advice. Relax. Every time you go, ugh, you're not gonna have a because, like, for instance, some of my students like struggle with a specific technique, for instance, tremolo, and you just need to be in an utter state of relaxation, kind of like your hands are a bit like jelly, to be able to make it so feathery. Otherwise, you're just gonna strain, and it's gonna sound harsh, and So yeah, these two things, these are the most repeated pieces of advice that I keep on saying to my students.
You mentioned posture. Do you mean people hunch over the kanun?
Yeah, mainly with, this is more of a technical thing. It's just how you are, so your kanun 101, so how you are, your default position in which you're plucking. I see. And yes, also, this plays into, posture but it's mainly how you're laying your fingers on the kanun, because you really need to think of it. I think of the kanun as an ice rink, and you need to be able to flow on it versus going like this, which is not very efficient, so for later when you want to play something fast. So yeah.
Okay. Well, on your second album, Finding Home, which is so beautiful, I've listened to it so much, you do feature a wonderful Syrian-British vocalist, Hamza Munif, in one song, In My Mother's Sweet Embrace. So is that a traditional song, or is that yours?
No, it's not a traditional song. It's mine, and my homeland, and the Arab countries are going through so much, and at the time I don't remember what triggered it, but I was feeling this huge wave of sadness and nostalgia, and it was just craving basically motherly love. And when I was writing the album, I was in a state of intense prayer. This is how I write music. I just have been praying intensely to the mother of the universe, the creator, God, whatever you want to call it. So we experience the love of the divine mother in the form of the earthly mother sometimes, or through any other person, or through being in nature. And I was just in that state of longing for that. And so I sat on the kanun, and I had a whisper in my ear that, like, you will always be in my embrace. And then I was like, ah. So I wrote the skeleton, and I just felt that I just needed a woman's voice in that. And I wrote it for kanun, string quartet, and voice. And the voice is just saying, ah, yammi, which means, oh mother. That's it. So it's just a call to that mother, to hold us in her sweet embrace.
So I did want to talk to you about some of your wonderful collaborators. So you have MacSween on piano.
Yes.
So he has like a jazz background.
Oh, he's a chameleon. I don't think he there's a music tradition out there that he didn't do. He's crazy versatile person and musician, you know, anything from jazz to experimental to electronic to Indian classical to flamenco to God knows what. And you know, every time I see him, I say, okay, what have you been playing? And he would go like, I've been playing with Kora. You know, the next day he's playing with a Chinese orchestra. And yeah, so he just extremely versatile and amazing musician and amazing person.
I mean, London is such a central city for music worldwide.
Absolutely.
And you play with Elizabeth Nott on percussion?
Yes, Elizabeth is amazing. She's Venezuelan British. Sometimes you just hear echoes of her Venezuelan, you know, influences. But she plays. She actually grew up in listening to Gurdjieff's. She was her family were one of the followers of Gurdjieff. And as you know, Gurdjieff's music is very much influenced from Arabic music. So there are lots of Arabic instrumentation, or they use maqam. So she grew up listening to that, and her dad was a percussionist. In fact, we played her dad's 100-year-old drum, which came from Syria, in the album. But yeah, she plays an array of percussive instruments, all the way from the rif, the small tamborello, all the way to the mighty daf with like these jingles that are intense, like in Soul Fever. So yeah, she's incredible, and she's my, you know, oldest collaborator, really.
So you mentioned Soul Fever. That's the one that was it was the British Museum. It was inspired from.
That's true.
Do you want to speak to that project?
Sure. So when I was writing Finding Home, I was like, I just had a feeling that I needed to make it a very collaborative project. So I just knocked doors on the doors of different organizations, and I thought, hey, do you want to collaborate? You know, and one of them was the British Museum, and they happened to have that incredible exhibition called Reflections that had works of art from the Middle East. And they said, okay, it was still hasn't opened up since lockdown. So I just go to a very empty British museum and I have a private tour in that exhibition space to see if there's anything calls to me. And the minute you walk in, there's this amazing figure who is in an intense state, and she's in black and white, and on her bust there are names of very famous songs by the diva of Arabic music, Kulthum, as well as names of like composers that wrote songs to her, like Ahmed Rami, Qasabji, and I knew that I was drawn to her, so I got the curator to give me like a PDF, and I printed it and I just hang it, and I was like, okay, lady, let's get going. So I tried to actually first use the melodies of the songs that are on her bust as an entry point to get into the composition, but I failed miserably doing that. And then I was like, okay, I surrender, so I'm just gonna let go of my conceptions, and I did a little prayer, and I said, okay, I'm listening, tell me whatever you want to tell me, and I went into meditation, and within like 3 minutes I heard the word Soul Fever, and then I sat on the Qanun, and within like 3 hours the main thing came together. And of course then there is the process of arranging it. But it was very cool because we recorded it in a late night in the museum in the same exhibition space, and then we shared it with the artist in an online event with the actual artist who created that work of art. And what was amazing is that she shared that, because there was not any lining notes or anything that gave me a bit of any context of what she has been going through or what she was thinking when she created this. But what was amazing is that she said that she was going through basically internal turmoil, trouble, dark night of the soul, so to speak, and it was amazing that I heard what she was trying to tell me through her work of art, and so yeah, it was like a beautiful moment of synchronicity when the work of art and the music came together, being in alignment with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a a form of writing, it's often poetry, called ekphrastic, where people are inspired by visual art. I've read some of that, and it's very interesting when it's a direct kind of inspiration.
Yeah, I need to check that out. Ekphrastic?
Ekphrastic, yes.
Okay. I'll check it out.
This excerpt is from Soul Fever. We had talked about some of your collaborators. Leo Abrahams is guitar and producer on your...
Yes, he was my co-producer. For, really, Leo is amazing. Leo is amazing. He's amazing at listening. And he's another musical chameleon, he played... Of course, he worked with his mentor, he's Brian Eno, and who's a very important music figure in the UK and internationally. But he recorded anything for guitar, for Adele to people from ECM. He just works with a vast array of musicians and artists. He's amazing at listening to what the artist wants to do, and supports the artist in crystallizing that artistic vision. So true privilege to work with Leo. We became really good friends, and I'm very grateful to have worked with him. It's very important for me also to work with people who are lovely people. I can't work with people who are not nice. It's music is a reflection of your inner state, and so all the team are amazing as people and as collaborators. So that's very, very important for me. But for this album, I actually called myself the producer, which I didn't have the guts to do for the first album. Really, even for Syrian Dreams, I should have been named as a producer because I've done 99% of the work. But then for the Finding Home, I called myself co-producer, and I called Leah my co-producer. So, and I bet there are thousands of women out there who do everything, and they don't just give credit to themselves. So he was my co-producer, and he was a joy to work with.
Actually, I'm curious in terms of the business side, marketing your course. How did you get specific advice, or did you model it on other similar platforms?
Yeah, I'm a student through and through. When I want to figure something out, I don't see any point in wasting years figuring it out. So I go and learn from people who did it. So I learn from mentors to help me with my business or my spirituality, or I'm a true believer in investing in yourself. Because it's a wild journey, really. It's nuts, particularly when you're working for yourself, and you spend a lot of time alone, and you do a lot of your own decisions, and sometimes you just need that other person to go like, am I insane, or is this the right thing to do, or just to soundboard ideas. So absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wonderful that you've created basically what we call passive income, because you put the time and energy into this wonderful kind of unique product that people can then access, but then the work is done for most of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It has been quite a journey. Even because when it comes to maqam, 99.99% of the guidance out there is a combination of being incorrect, a combination of being too surface level, too cliche, and 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 also on top of that, all the creators of that world are men. So I was like, okay, there was like a little voice in my head like saying, okay, no old me is gonna come with this revolutionary method that is gonna change the world. And it just, you needed, of course, without support from my family, and because it took guts to put it out there and trust it, and of course, when the results came in from my students and I started to see, holy smokes, this works, like, because for instance, like for understanding how to play taqsim, the alternative is really horrible. I have people who wasted like 20 years, 30 years trying to crack how to create an authentic taqsim, and they still haven't, so, and no additional amount of time will give them the ability to be able to do it. So it's not about your technique, it's not about your, how hard you try, it's not about how many decades you're trying to put in. Without the method, you're just going to continue like scrambling in the dark. And so when I started seeing, the results from my students achieving, what would be called impossible in literally months, that gave me a lot of motivation to go, okay, right, you need to put it out there, because people need it, really. So, and I love this tradition. I'm a carrier of this tradition. It's my responsibility to make it accessible.
This clip is from My Homeland. So you've had some really difficult times in your life. Of course, you had to escape the war in Syria. And you have shared publicly that you're also a survivor of domestic abuse. Would you feel comfortable speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. But for clarity, I really didn't go out of Syria because of the war. I just went out of Syria because my ex at the time had a job in Dubai, so I followed him. So I graduated and I followed him, and I left in 2007. So I left Syria long before the war started. And when I came to the UK, I had the honor to receive an award called an Exceptional Talent, which had an endorsement from Arts Council England. So it was incredible, this incredible thing, that they just, okay, you come to the UK, you're an exceptional talent, but at the time they gave me no guidance whatsoever. And because at the same time I was going through abuse, it was kind of a wild journey to figure out, the game of being a musician in a new country while dealing with the war in Syria, while dealing with domestic violence, while being a mum to a young child. It just felt like the whole world was kind of toppled upside down, and the only two things that made sense were my son and my music, But I mean, I don't mind talking about it because I believe I'm happily married. I'm in a place of grace. So it's very important that people talk about it because it's very big amount of unnecessary shame. You know, like for instance, I see refugees as heroes. I see survivors of domestic violence as heroes or sheroes. You know, these are people who survived the hardest of the hard, and then they emerge on the other side. So they need to share their stories and be proud. You know, versus like, oh, I experienced domestic abuse. It's no, they need to proudly share that I've been through this and look at me now. You know, because you don't know who's listening. Because for me, I'll tell you one thing. When I shared 2 years later, when I shared, I have been public about, you know, the experience of domestic abuse, and you know, many years later, I received a message from a dear musician friend, incredible musician, who said, "Look, I'm going through the same thing that you have been going through, and I'm scared to death to talk to you about it, but here I am. You inspired me to do it." And now she is on the other side of the story, and she is sharing, you know, her vulnerability and her newfound strength and you know, beautiful blossoming of her, you know, and stepping into her feminine power because of that. So you never know who's listening. So yeah, I feel perfectly okay talking about it because I don't know who's listening, and so whoever's listening, talk about it. You know, it's insane the amount of people that experience domestic abuse. It's insane, blows my mind. And the more we normalize it, the more we empower people to say no, this is not okay, and to step into safety and to empower themselves to go towards the better future that they deserve.
Thank you so much for that. To get out of it, were you inspired by someone you knew who had been through that?
No, I just had no choice. I had a child. I had no choice, and I felt like, you know, because, you know, the abuse happened at the same time when the Syrian war was going on. So that thing tips you off your center anyway. But coupled, I felt like there was a war back home and a war at home, and that's why it just felt like complete pressure cooker situation. And yeah, so there was a voice that rang in my head like that told me that you either do something or you're gonna perish. And let me tell you, it was easier to perish, if I'm honest. You know, it's very easy to give up. But, you know, looking at the face of my son, I can't. So he inspired me to fight. And somehow he knew, you know, some crazily children know. Like when I was trying to practice, trying to pick my, you know, to have some focus to practice because I had some concerts at the time. He was tiny, like, I don't know, 3-4-year-old. And after every piece I would practice, he'd bow at me and he would say, "Thank you, mummy." Tiny person, and I'd look at him like, okay, I better continue. You know, consistently after every single piece, "Thank you, mummy," like deep bowing. I'm like, okay, he knows. Somebody's speaking to him to tell me this. I don't know, I'm just going to continue even though I have no idea how the next 5 minutes is going to unfold. And so, but yeah, there is always grace, you know, there's always grace. And I have been surrounded by so much grace, and still I am.
And you did do graduate school in England when you immigrated in musicology?
Yes, I got a scholarship to study ethnomusicology at SOAS. Which was incredible. SOAS is quite phenomenal. It's quite a little bubble of the world in which kind of it's like a bubble of people who want to change the world. And there is this, I don't know, when you step into the campus, there is this sense, there are all sorts of like people studying these amazing, crazy, weird things, you know? So, like, and the music was so amazing. There was a very, very strong community there. They even supported me even through the abuse, situation. But yeah, from the perspective of learning, it was a very, very enriching experience, kind of like opening up to a new way of exploring music and sound.
Do you have a story from that time of something that really stayed with you? A learning experience or collaboration?
Yeah. So, like, for instance, my first composition, I've done the piece for Qanun and gamelan, and I actually played the gamelan, the thing, and we had this amazing gamelan room in SOAS. I don't know if any SOASians listening, you'll know what I'm talking about, and Qanun and gamelan, go figure. It was a very weird piece. I have no idea where it is. I wish I could find it. But yeah, it allowed this kind of fantastically weird me to come out of the closet.
Yeah, one of your influences that came up was Aziza Mustafa Zadeh.
Oh yes. Oh my God, I love her. Yeah. She changed my life.
So have you met with her? Have you worked with her, or just listening?
No, just listening. I have been. There was a period of time in which I was obsessed. I don't listen to her as much, but she was in my ear all day, every day. And I just. I believe it was a combination of how free and expressive and fluid. She's a pianist, composer, and crazy amazing vocalist. And how she's Azeri, and how she was fusing all these worlds between, the classical music, the jazz, the Azeri tradition, in such originality, in such freedom, in such virtuosity. Like, she's impossibly virtuosic. That I just, she is the diva to me.
Well, of course I went and listened to her when I read it. It was a name I didn't know. You should reach out to her. You should collaborate. That would be so much fun.
Yeah, maybe I should.
There was several tracks on Finding Home, inspired by nature. I was wondering, like, Walk With Me, you have two versions, one with strings. Yes. Do you want to speak to any of that?
Yeah, sure. Walk With Me, first of all, I wrote it during lockdown. It was commissioned by BBC Radio 3. It was funny, they literally asked me 2 days before it was supposed to be broadcasted, and I wrote it within I think like an hour, and everybody was bewildered that I shared something that I've written in 1 hour 1 day ago. But it's a track that was written before I write. I pray, I meditate, I ask whatever wants to come through for the healing, the upliftment of whoever is listening. And I do that, by the way, before I teach or, before I speak, before I do anything. It's the same thing to me. It's all the continuum of the same thing. So I did my ritual, and then in meditation I just saw, like lockdown was a bit of a time of dread, but I was comforted by this beautiful image of all humanity walking together towards a better and more compassionate future to everyone on the earth. And so there's this like very strong sense of hope and optimism. And so I did two versions of it, the string quartet, because I wanted kind of like a collective experience of walking together. And I've done a version of it with Leo, actually, who has done some amazing ambient guitar on it that feels a bit more spacious. So yeah.
This excerpt is from Walk With Me, featuring Leo Abrahams. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and I love when artists include different versions of something on an album. It's very, very beautiful thing. So, do you have an upcoming book, Maya?
Yes, it's a book about maqam because it has to be written, and it has to be written by me. So because everybody who comes to me, I talk to people from all over the world every day who wants to learn maqam, okay? And the immediate question is, what book do you recommend? And my answer is none. Because as a person who's read every single maqam book on the planet, again, it's either the misleading information or you get like 2-3 sentences about the maqam and goodbye, you're supposed to figure it out on your own, or scales, like this little something on a scale, and that's it. But there's so much richness to maqam, like you can write a book about each of the 9 main maqamat that are used in Arabic music today. And so because I've created this methodology, because the material is essentially done, I'm going to release a chapter this October, and then I'm going to do a Kickstarter to launch it in February 2026, and it will be released autumn next year. So yeah, I committed to it. God help me, it'll be fun. But yeah, it has to be done, and I'm excited to serve whoever is interested in Arabic music with this project.
Wonderful. And do you have an upcoming album or new compositions in the works?
Yes. So I actually wrote 2 half albums. So now I just need to decide which one I should move forward with. But I'm going to go back to writing, as a person who has many strands of work. I chose this year, okay, this is the year in which I'm going to focus on my teaching strand. And then in October, I'm going to go into the writing incubator, which I'm looking forward to. And yeah, same thing, it will be released 2026. So whether you're interested in the music or, the teaching strand, there is a lot coming up, and it's all exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I often ask people how they balance their creative life. So it sounds like you're very, you're organized about it.
Yes, it's not always the case. I became like this. Before it was a bit of, the more you grow up, the more you understand what it takes to build a certain thing. And it's impossible for everybody to do everything at the same time. There are seasons for things, like for instance, when I release the album, it's going to be my touring season, it's going to be my PR season, it's going to be my season to show up in interviews and shows and stages to talk about it. It's not going to be my teaching season, and I love the multiplicity of the world, and I just love the fact that I teach, for instance, like 3 different kinds of students. I teach kanun players, everything that comes with kanun. I teach Arabic music lovers who play all sorts of instruments, how to learn maqam and taqsim. And recently I started working with dancers, belly dancers and Rast artists to understand Arabic music so they can, more authentically interpret the music that they dance to. And I find that very exciting, To some people this might sound exhausting, but to me this sounds really fun, because I can just do all of these things. But yeah, to me at least, it has to be cyclical, so I can do a good job at, doing whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Really appreciate it.
So much fun to talk to you, Leah. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this with your friends and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. I'm an independent podcaster and I really do need the help of my listeners. All the links are in the show notes. The podcast theme music was written by Nick Cold. Have a wonderful week.